back, Ben. I appreciate it. We had an interesting debate in the snowfall last time, so no snow, and we've got a few more folks also. I would agree that we have issues to be of concern, but I do come from a different perspective than our other presenter. My name is Kerry Messer. I am a farmer, and I'm in a different capacity in that I do lobby in Jefferson City from the right side of different issues. I'm a conservative, and there's probably a lot of issues that we would disagree on. So I want to just throw that out there and just let you know. That's where I'm at philosophically, politically, so as to say. I also came a little more prepared to talk specifically about meat consumption, and there was a little disconnect in my mind on the climate change aspect of the focus tonight, so I'll be a little bit deficient on that side. So let me start off by making a couple of comments. Climate change, is it real or not? Your first presenter believes that it is. I'm skeptical. I am uncertain. I find scientists on both sides, and the further this debate goes, the more I see scientists coming out saying that they're not so certain that the original ideas are really qualified ideas. So it seems to me, from my perspective in working in the political field, that there's an awful lot of politics that surrounds this subject. And yes, we all have our minds set because we're preconditioned by the things that we run into, but the science is still out for a lot of people. I'm one of those people. Some things I know for a fact, and that is lowering agricultural machinery lowers production disproportionately. It's just like manufacturing. You'll understand manufacturing that you could produce, standing at a table by yourself, X number of widgets in X amount of time. But if you create an assembly line and you develop efficient methods of creating widgets and you employ people to create your widgets, you can maximize and duplicate the number of widgets you can make in the number of time and the amount of people, and for less energy, less input, you get more output. The same is true in agriculture. A 100 horsepower tractor does more than twice the work of a 50 horsepower tractor, etc. This goes on. You can apply it in a lot of ways. A 100 horsepower tractor can pull so many more furrow plows, can disc so much more, can plant so many rows at once, can harvest so much more. It's literally much more than twice than a 50 horsepower tractor. And again, that applies across the board. So when we talk about lowering agricultural machinery application, you're going to have less food. That's all there is to it. You cannot produce the food when you lower it. Secondly, I know for a fact that without proper soil management, you will have, and of course, if you reduce the soil management as an effort to reduce that 6% greenhouse gases that you just heard referred to, the end result is you'll get no crops. You'll deplete the soil. You'll deplete the nutrients in the soil. All soils have varying nutrient values. Every time you take crops off of soil, I don't care if it's cutting your grass or harvesting your corn or harvesting your tomatoes or your other vegetables, you are removing nutrients from the soil. Those products do not materialize magically out of the soil. There are scientific principles involved. There's nutrients coming out of the soil. And so if you continue pulling those nutrients out of the soil and you don't replace them in some fashion, and there are some very good natural processes to employ to replenish some of those nutrients. But the fact is, it requires machines and human intervention and human effort and management techniques to maintain the nutrient values. Finally, I've got several things, but converting poor soils for grain and vegetable crops is not always a doable thing. In fact, it's most of the time not a doable thing. If you try to take poor soil, and I'll define poor soil in a moment, and you try to develop that soil so you can produce grain and vegetable crops, you will put more environmental damage into the air trying to bring that soil up to speed. Here's what I mean. Of the world's land mass, 40% of that land mass is totally unavailable and inaccessible and impossible to use for producing any kind of agricultural goods. You can understand that go to any desert area, to go to very steep mountainsides. I mean, there's all kinds of applications. Literally 40% of the world's land mass is unavailable. You can't even consider it for agricultural production. 30% of the world's land mass can only sustain forest and woodlands. The soil is too depleted. It's not good enough. After there has been forest there for enough thousands of years, you have soil buildup. But as we hear about them mowing down rainforest and converting that to agricultural land, that soil is still very poor, and they're going to get a bumper crop for a very short period. Those nutrients are going to be sucked out of that soil because that soil does not hold those nutrients naturally. So that's not a good choice. Less than 20% of the land mass is acceptable even for grasslands and forage for animals. 10%, it's actually about 10.5% of the world's land mass is capable of producing grain crops and vegetables. There is a huge misnomer. People think we can get rid of all the cattle, get rid of all the hogs, get rid of all the animals that require grain crops, convert all that grassland and all that cropland to producing grains and vegetables for human consumption. Cannot be done. It's physically impossible. You cannot transport enough fertilizers, artificial fertilizers, and the carbon imprint that would be created in trying to upgrade just the grasslands that's used for pastures. When you drive across Missouri, south of Highway 70, and you see all these fields with these cattle in them, 90+% of all those fields, that's the only thing you can do with those fields. It would cost so much in damage to the environment to try to change that soil type to grow human consumption grains and vegetables that nobody would do it. Here's a point to bear. Every farmer out there knows you can make somewhere between 4 and 8 times more profit from an acre of cropland raising grains. You can make 10-fold to 20-fold per acre growing vegetables. Why does everybody south of Highway 70 raise farm animals? Why do they only have pasture land? It's because that soil cannot do anything different. So what are we going to do with that? The only thing you can do is raise the animals. Now here's the important point. Worldwide malnutrition and starvation, as you know, is a huge problem. Undernutrition for healthy, older teens and adults over a short period of time is very doable. None of us want to do it, and we don't generally see that in our culture here in the United States. But you can sustain it for a period of time, and you can recuperate from it. But infants, young children, the elderly, and the diseased cannot sustain malnutrition for any length of time. Worldwide, every year, approximately 500 million children, predominantly infants, die from malnutrition. And that's not from a lack of food. It's from a lack of quality food. 200 million infants die a year purely identified as only from a deficiency of the meat proteins that are commonly available in other parts of the world. Vitamins and minerals from food is good, but there are certain vitamins and minerals that you can only get from meat. There are certain amino acids and animal proteins that only come from animals, and to synthesize them, And to provide them artificially does not work. There are vitamin B complexes, amino acids that cannot be produced efficiently outside of animal agriculture. So with those things in mind, this gets complicated, but you simply cannot convert the world's land mass, agricultural use, to grains and vegetables for human consumption and do away with animals. It doesn't work.